the
Nice.
podcast now. But Brad, man, it is good to meet you face to face. I know we were just joking as you're in Canada, I'm here in Nashville, but I was telling you we got some snow flurries, and so
Your weather's worse than mine right now.
yeah, crazy.
What?
But man, it's an honor to have you
Yeah.
on the Books for Guys podcast and to talk about your work and background. And Brad, just for those who don't know you or haven't read your work, tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of how you got into writing books.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, so hey everyone, I'm Brad Anderson. I've got two science. So I've published a bunch of science fiction novels. Two have been traditionally published. I self-published three when I was younger. I kind of tell everyone those are my practice books, where I figured
Yeah.
everything, where I did all my mistakes and figured it all out. Yeah. So my background, by night, I'm a science fiction writer by night. By day, I'm a university prof. I teach entrepreneurial leadership at a little
You've been
university
there a
here.
while, right? I saw where
I've
you've
done
been
research on,
teaching and been a professor for a
yeah,
long time.
yeah, since about 2009. So whatever that is, that's 15 going on
Time
6.
flies.
Oh, man. I
I
had
got some
less,
gray too. I just shaved it
I
so
had
no one can
less.
see.
Yeah. I always joke like this, I think is the oldest part of my body right here because that's where the gray is. Right. So yeah, no, I've been a prof since 2009. Prior to that, I used to work in the biotech industry. So I did a major life switch way back in the early 2000s. I was a science guy. I had a master's degree in medical science. I worked in the biotech industry. I made drugs for a living legally, all that kind of stuff. And then I joined the dark side and I got my MBA and I shifted gears into the business side. And now I'm a business prof. And like people who knew me when I was young, they're like, "What? You weren't you like in the sciences? How does a science guy become
Yeah.
a business prof?" And
Was
I'm
there
like,
was there something
I don't know.
was there
But here
something
I am.
that, I don't know, that just triggered you to be interested in making a switch, or what kinda led to that
Yeah,
transition?
a couple of things. Yeah, yeah. So there's a couple of things. Like one was so the biotech, the biotech industry is volatile. It's a volatile industry. So I worked with a lot of small startup companies. And so the stats with drug development is like 80% of drugs fail the clinical development in the clinical development pipeline. But that means if you're like working with a small companies usually only have one product. And if that goes down in a clinical trial, well, the company kind of goes out of business. Mm. And so yeah, I worked in this ecosystem of a lot of small companies, and like over a 10-year period, 80% of them would be going out of business. And like, yeah, I sort of spend like a lot of time hopping from company. It's like, trying to like leap
Yeah.
off of one sinking ship onto another sinking ship. And when you're in your 20s and early 30s, like that's a lot of fun,
Yeah.
right? But then I got married and got a mortgage, and I was like, this isn't as
Yeah. It's
exciting
actually
anymore.
kinda stressful.
I think my swashbuckling days. Yeah, now this is where it used to be fun. Now I'm freaking out a little bit. And then finally it got me. 2008, the big recession. They got me, right. I got laid off, out of work. But at that time, I'd gotten my MBA by that time, right? So when you're laid off, you do what you do, which is like a lot of networking and stuff like that, and applying to jobs, trying to get jobs. And I remember I had this one networking meeting with this. She was like the vice president of clinical development for this company that got shut down, and she got laid off. And I remember like looking at so like she at that time I was like in my early 30s. At that time she was like in her 50s. I'm in my 50s now, but this was way back when. And I remember like looking at her and like I could see my future, right? Like so she's the VP of this small little biotech company. If she can't get a job, she's probably going to have to move someplace. She like one of two things. Either she's going to stay unemployed or she's going to get a job here where she lives, but it's going to probably be a big demotion, or she's going to have to move. And like here she is in her 50s, sort of facing that uncertainty. And I'm like, man, do I want to
Yeah.
be like that when I'm in my 50s? I was like, no. But at that time, my MBA was still kind of new. Or like there's like a certain period of time when you can get new jobs with a credential, and then after a
Yeah.
certain period of time, they're like, that credential is like 5 years old. What do you know anymore? So I'm like, it was still kind of new. So I'm like, no,
Yeah.
maybe I should try to shift gears. I don't know
Yeah, yeah.
if you got more time for a story. I like how I got into teaching was so as I'm laid off, I'm like, okay, now's great. I'm unemployed. And now's the time for me to start making, if I'm going to make a change, I got nothing to lose now. I got a little bit into, like, I was using my MBA, got a little bit into real estate development and stuff like that. But I was like, didn't want to do that as a day job. So I started to, like, when I had no boss and I could just do what I wanted to do, what I started to do was, okay, I started to create these training programs that I could, sort of implement as a consultant on something like that. And then my wife, all great decisions, right? My wife was like, hey, if that's kind of the career, the direction you'd like your career to take, what would add some cachet to your resume as if you taught maybe a university course or two or something like that. And we had a friend down the hall who worked in the universities. We are like, how do you do that? And he's like, oh, here's where you apply. I applied. I got it. I got a gig for, a semester teaching courses. And I was like, this is the best thing I've done in my life. Like, this is the only thing I like. Why have I not been doing this my whole
Yeah.
career? Like, I fell in love with teaching. I'm like, this is the only thing I want to do. And I threw myself
Still
into it.
doing
And
it.
16 years later, I'm still
Yeah.
doing it.
Well, that's
So there
amazing.
we
I've
go. That's my story.
always, I mean,
Yeah.
I remember being in college and then I was about to graduate and I realized how much I liked college and I was like, how do I stay here? Can I,
Yeah.
do I need to get another
How do I stay
degree?
here? How do I do
How do I
this?
become a
Yeah.
professor? I mean, one day it's actually kind of a dream or goal of mine to do the same thing. So I think I love teaching and helping others and I love that setting.
I love it. It's an awesome
Yeah.
gig. If you can
Yeah.
get it,
No,
it's
I
an
think that's
awesome gig. It's
incredible.
a
And
good gig.
obviously, I mean, you've been doing it for 15 plus years now and you're like, and you're still like, this is the best thing ever. Like, I love it.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So yeah, it was good. It was good. It was good for me. It was a good layoff. It was a bad layoff experience at the time, and I still kind of carry the scars with me. But like in terms of the grand sweep of my life, I was like, you know what? I don't think that would have happened. I don't think I'd be doing
Blessing
this
in
if that
disguise.
hadn't
You never
happened to me.
know.
So was it Garth Brooks? You're from Nashville. Garth Brooks. Was
That's
it
right. Yeah.
Thank God for Unanswered Prayers or something like that?
That's
Yeah, thank
right.
God for
That's
unanswered
exactly
prayers.
what it's talking about right there. No, well, Brad, when did you start? Did you grow up writing, or when did you transition into actually starting to? You said you wrote a few, and you
Yeah.
self-published as kind of practice, as you say, and then now you've got to
Yeah.
publish the
Yeah.
traditional route. But what got you started on writing?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I always wrote. When I was a kid, that was just I wrote. It was just probably I hardwired into me. I just
Were you
had
a
stories
reader
in my
too?
head
Then,
and
I
I'd
mean,
write
did
them
you
out.
interchangeably? You enjoyed both.
Yeah, absolutely. I read a lot. I read voraciously as a kid. I just enjoyed it. So I'm an only child. I'm an only child. So there's a lot of silence in my life. A lot of quiet in my life. So it's just a little bookish kid in the corner reading a book by himself. Just yeah, I read a lot. Stories came out of me. I'd write a lot. How I got into writing novels was and as a child, as a kid, it'd just be short stories that I wrote. And I like as a teenager, I'm like, you know what? I want to write a novel. But I'd always get, about two or three chapters into it, and then I'd stop, I'd get bored. And so I just had all these novels that I started to write, but never finished. And then I said, okay, Brad, I'm going to write a novel and I'm
Let's
not going to
go.
write anything else until I finished this novel. And that was a mistake because I never wrote anything else
Wow.
for like 20 years. I kept that promise, but I never wrote anything else for like 20 years. And it was sort of, you go into university and you're working, it's pretty busy. You're working and then you got a job and, life gets away from you. But sort of, things settle down when I'm in my 30s. And I was like, yeah, I just still had stories in my head, still wanted to write. And I sort of blew the dust off this
Yeah.
crap that I wrote when I was like 13. And I was like, this is a good start to a story here. And then I finally finished it. And that was the first story that I self-published. Yeah, there we go. And then, yeah, I've
Yeah.
just been,
No,
just
that's
been writing
amazing.
ever since.
As you're talking, I'm thinking of like some of my friends because I feel like as young guys, you kind of go one or two directions. You either you're a reader as a young kid or you just don't like it. And I have
Yeah,
said
it's
multiple
true.
times I love reading now, but I really didn't enjoy it for personal pleasure until probably after college. And kind of my goal is to help
Yeah.
young guys find that joy of reading at an earlier age because man, it's awesome when you figure out just how amazing reading can be, how much you can learn, how relaxing it can be. I mean, there's so many benefits to reading a good book. But I was thinking as you said that my friends growing up, the ones that were reading all the time, they were also only kids. They were the only child. And I was just thinking, I was like, so I know 3 guys that I was
That's
good
right.
friends with, they were the only child and they were the always reading while me and some of the others were never reading. I don't know if there's any correlation to that or not, but I was just thinking about
And that's a good question. There's like
Yeah,
nobody to
yeah.
give you
So just
wedgies
interesting
while
as
you're
I was
yeah.
thinking as you were saying that, just kind of what that made me remember. But again, I don't know if there's any correlation to that or not. But no, we'll talk about the process then of, you self-published a few stories. Now you've got your
Yeah.
newest one. I want you to talk about your latest novel and just kind of your ideas and how you created the character and the story and why your interest was in that. But just talk a little bit about that.
Cool. Yeah. My latest story. It's called Ashme's Song. Ashme's Song. So science fiction. I write in the science fiction slash fantasy genre. This would be more science fictiony. So what's the story about? Really, if this young woman Ashme, she's kind of choosing her where she lives. So it's science fiction, takes place in the far future. Here she is on this other world, this other society, other civilization. It's devolving into civil war right now. So it's a society kind of slowly being torn apart, and she's faced with this choice: should she look after her family? Should she get her family and get the heck out of there, or should she stay and should she fight for her country, for her people? So that's really the tension that she faces. Like, what's the right thing to do? Is the right thing for me to get my family out of here, or is the right thing for me to stand up and fight for my people? So the story sort of explores that issue with her. In terms of like how did where does the idea come from? Is sort of expanding the story a little bit more. So I always want when I write a story, I want you to be able to read it at multiple levels. Like if you just want to come to a story and you just like, I just want to have some fun. I think you can read my
Yeah.
stories. You can turn your brain off. You
Yeah.
can read my stories and you can just have a good time. But if you want something more out of the stories, you can kind of look and like there's other layers. I want to try to create other layers in the story. So where did the story come from? What are these other layers? The story really, for this particular story, Ashme Song really came, it was born in my head probably back in like 2016, 2015, 2016. At that time, the Syrian refugee crisis was going on. You might remember that from 10 years ago. So Syria broke down in a civil war, and there's the flood of these millions, like millions and millions of refugees. And I remember reading some news articles around that time where there was, there were like politicians and people were asking, like, look at all these young men who are like flooding into our country. These refugees that are young men coming into our country, like they shouldn't be coming into our country. They should be staying back in Syria and fighting for their country, right? Like that's kind of this attitude that was kind of going around in the circles at that time. And it kind of got me thinking, like, what is the heroic thing to do? Like, what does it mean to be a hero? Like, is a hero somebody who stands up and fights for their country, or is a hero somebody who like gets their family and gets the hell out? A danger, right? Like is one less of a hero than the other, right? And I wanted to explore that. Like, I wanted to create the situation where like it's a very real tension. Because like on the one hand, like yeah, you need people to fight for what's right. Like you need people to fight for what's right. But on the other hand, like you also need to like
Accurate.
get your family and keep them safe, right? Like it's a very real tension. And so I wanted to have a story that explored that tension. And that's kind of where Ashme's
Interesting.
song
Well,
comes
when I
from.
was reading about your book, it's funny you say that because I was gonna say that scenario immediately created tension in me as I was thinking about what would I do. Because I think about that all the time in
What
general,
I do.
like, I don't know, and I was gonna talk about just like the science fiction and fantasy too. I used to not read as much, but I think because of technology and AI and certain things that are intertwined and real right now, when I read these type of stories and stuff, it's easier for me to think about the possibilities of where we're headed in certain worlds and the way things are. So it's
Yeah.
now I'm a lot more interested because I can like actually mesh things together a little bit more and make it realistic. But the tension I felt, I was thinking the same thing. Like, would I protect my family, my dog? Would we go and be safe? Or as I don't know, a fit individuals and my responsibility to stand up and fight for others, along with my family. So even just reading about your book, I was like, ooh, he's already creating some questions in my head that I'm
What
thinking
would I do?
about.
And I mean, yeah, and I don't like. Here's the thing: like the reason why that's I think such a compelling question is because I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
there's a right or wrong answer to that, right? Like it's like you need people to stand up and fight,
Yeah.
but it's your job. If you're a father, your job
Yeah.
is to keep your kids alive, right?
You
Or
you
your
teach
husband, your
business,
job is
but
to
there may
keep
be
your
some
wife alive, right?
philosophy in there because I'm thinking about, like, back to some
There-
philosophy classes where there certain scenarios were presented for us to talk about, and there wasn't a wrong or right answer, and this is one of
Yeah,
those scenarios where you're like, "Man, what would I personally do?" And what I would personally do is not wrong.
It's
but it may be
it's
different than what someone else does and the way they think. But I love that
yeah,
you thought about this scenario and you based it off something that really took place. There were people that had to
yeah.
think this exact, issue out for what they want to do and what they think's best. And no, it's interesting. Like I said, when I was reading about it, I was like, oh, this one is a
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That was my goal. I was like, and like I don't think I hold any punches in the book. Like I think like she wrestles with that, I think,
yeah,
till the end. I think she wrestles with it till the end. And eventually she makes a decision at the end. But like life's I don't know, the older I get, it's like life's
yeah,
not about right and wrong, life's about
yeah,
trade-offs, right? Like there's trade-offs, right? There's no like ideal answer to anything. It's just like
yeah.
what crap are you living to live with
And you gotta do your
to
best to
get
forget
whatever you're
about the
going to get
rest
out
and
of it,
don't let
right?
it, simmer in there. No, I love that. Are you,
Yeah.
now that you've written this one and published it, I'm assuming that you're going to continue to write. And do you have any other projects you're working on currently, or kind of letting this have its moment and you'll kind
Yeah.
of organically kind of start writing when another idea comes about?
Yeah, I always seem like it's funny. I always when I start a project, I'm like, that's the only idea I have, and I'm like, I don't know. So it takes me like I'm slow. I'm very slow at writing. Like it takes me years. Like I do a lot of research, a lot of thinking, blah blah blah. And so for like years, as I start writing, I'm like, this might be the last idea I ever have. Like I'm just. And then somewhere in that multi-year process, I'm like, okay, I got my idea for my next story now, and I can't wait to start it. Uh, so I do have a story that I'm writing now. So first off, I have two books that have been traditionally published. Ashme's Song is my most recent one. My previous one is called Duotero. They're standalone novels. I'm a standalone novel kind of guy. I like to read standalone novels, and nobody writes them anymore, so I write standalone novels. So they're all different. I do have a project that I'm working on now. I think if I was to characterize it, I'd say it's a cross between Dune meets
Okay.
Conan the Barbarian. Frank Herbert's Dune meets Conan the Barbarian. It's sort of a sci-fi
Yeah.
fantasy epic
Yeah. Heck yeah.
part. Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if you're
I know,
writing
right?
books or are we writing movies here, this could turn into something awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Hey, Hollywood, I would love it if they did,
I
but yeah,
actually ask a
that's
lot of
exactly.
authors that question, especially when they write fiction or books like these, if I don't know, if is it ever like a dream for someone to pick that up and create a script for it, or, is it something you don't really think about?
That'd be pretty cool. I don't think about it in the way that like I don't.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
it'll probably never happen. What are
It'd be
the
cool
odds
if
of
it
it happening?
happens, but it's not like a
I'm not gonna base my life
push
on
to
it.
make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it would be swell if it happened. Like, holy crap, that'd be pretty awesome. But yeah, it's I know the numbers games.
Yeah.
I'm just happy. I'm just happy to be writing. Sometimes I want like I don't know if it's easier to write like I don't know if it's easier to publish screenplays or novels. Like I think both are probably horrendously difficult to actually publish something
Hey,
successfully.
I mean, with as
But
much
yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah,
things
well,
it
with
comes
as
out as
much
novels for me.
content that's being, created and pushed out there, you never know. Someone may read your book and it may spark some interest
I
there.
know.
We'll speak it into
This would make
existence,
yeah,
you know?
this would make a
Uh,
great.
yeah,
I'm all for
so
that. I'm
with
all for it.
you,
That's the
with
thing.
you teaching and having, a normal job, a career that you focus on as well, and family and other
Yeah.
responsibilities, I guess when it comes to writing and for you to be your most creative, I mean, do you wake up early and do it? Do you write late at night? Or what's kind of your process when you're trying to put your book together?
Yeah, it's I'm a nighttime writer at the present time. Yeah,
Well, one of your
I'm not an early
taglines
morning guy.
on your
I'm
LinkedIn
not
is
an early morning
caffeine lover, coffee lover. You must
caffeine lover.
pot in the
Yeah,
morning and then a pot at night.
yeah. I'm a slow starter, so it takes me about half the day just so and a pot of coffee. Just okay, where am I? Yeah. So usually, yeah. My practice now. Like I'd like to. I have dreams like, oh, someday I'll retire, or maybe I'll go half time and I can write during the day. But yeah, right now, it's usually in the evening. So like I'll have supper and then I'll try to write for about an hour. So this is why it takes me years to write a novel. I'll write for like an hour, or maybe a little on a good night, maybe a little bit more. And then, yeah, do a little bit of reading before I go to bed. I try to read for about half an hour before I go to bed. So yeah, every night, yeah, I chip away. That's the ability to persistently chip away at things is a
Yeah.
secret to accomplishing big things because Just
Yeah.
write a couple hundred words a night. After a year,
Got
maybe
something
2
together.
years,
Yeah.
you'll have a book. But yeah, those
Yeah.
2 years are gonna pass anyways, you know? At the end of those 2 years, you can have a
Yeah.
book, or at the end of the 2 years, you could be where
No,
you are now, you
that's
know?
great.
I'll just
I
chip
always
away at it.
for me, the concept of time is so interesting just because some days just seem to fly by and you're just checking things off. Like you gotta get here, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. You just yeah, just to find the
You're on
time for
fire.
what you're passionate about and to like spend time doing that and putting something together. And I guess like the lesson is if you can just chip away at it, at some point you'll complete it and it feels good. It just sometimes takes a lot of time to be able to balance that in with everyday life, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly. And some days, when I'm in the writing period of writing, like not all writing is writing. Some writing is world building and whatever. But when I'm in the writing period of writing, I keep track of the words I do, and I try for a couple hundred words a day if I can. But sometimes some days, I like, oh
Yeah.
man, I wrote like 50 words today. Like, but it's 50 words. I'm two
Yeah.
sentences closer to
Yeah.
than I was
No,
at the start.
it's interesting. I've always because I've talked to individuals who are full-time authors. So that is their job. So they have, they treat it like a normal job. They're up, they work all day, they write, and then at night it's family time and they turn that off. But when you have other things to do, yeah, I'm always
Yeah.
curious like are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Because I'm complete opposite of you. I'm like 5 a.m. to probably 9 a.m. is my most productive brain time. After that, I'm in bed by 8:30 or 9.
Really, eh?
I'm done.
Are you? Yeah. It's weird how
Yeah, just how different
people are
people can be
wired
with
like
that.
that, like
Yeah,
differently. Like,
it's so interesting. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Like, man, if I got up at 5 a.m., I would be
yeah, yeah, I
complaining about
know,
that for
and
a
a lot of
week.
people are, but me, I'm like, "This is
I
my
gotta get up
quiet
at
time,
5
no
a.m.
one else is around, I get my coffee, I'm sitting there, and I'm like" but other people are like, "Dude, you're crazy, why are you awake?" Yeah, by
You did
choice,
that
why
by
are you up?
choice? Yeah.
They're like, "You don't even have kids, why are you awake so early?" But, no, Brad,
Like,
I got one more question for you, and I ask everybody this, that comes
sure.
on the Books for Guys podcast, and it's more just, geared around your favorite books. Obviously, as a reader, this may probably
Yeah,
a
okay.
tough question because you've read a lot of books, but what's a book or 2 that has
Sure.
had a personal or professional impact on you? And if someone were to ask you for a good book recommendation right now, which one would you what would you recommend to others?
Cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I got a lot of answers to that question. A lot of it depends what you're looking for. All right, so there's a couple of books. You know what? One of my favorite authors. I haven't read him for a while. I gotta get back into his library. His name is Guy Gavriel Kay. He's a Canadian author. He writes in the fantasy genre, but it's almost like, I don't know. I just prose is beautiful. Like I read his novels, and it just makes me want to like take my laptop and throw it out the window. Like, oh, he's just such an amazing writer, Guy Gavriel Kay. Lines of Al Rashan. I think the novel Lines of Al Rashan has one of the best final chapters
Okay.
of any book
And
I've
keep
ever
talking,
read.
Brad. I'm moving
Um,
to a different
I think.
room real quick.
No problem. While you're doing that, yeah. So Guy Gavriel Kay. In
Someone
the
has more.
science fiction genre, I find Ursula Le Guin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name properly. Ursula Le Guin. The book Left Hand of Darkness. I thought the Left Hand of Darkness was just sort of this
Yeah.
coolest little book that I read in a long time. So I really enjoyed that. So those would be some books. Those are some of my favorite authors: Ursula Le Guin, Guy
Yeah.
Gavriel Kay. In terms of like book recommendations, a lot of it depends what you're looking for. If you're into like a hugely philosophical, like what's the nature of existence kind of book, I would recommend like Neil Stephenson's Anathem.
I was
It's
just
an
about to
absolute
ask you, this sounds
doorstopper of
like
a
a
book. It's a huge
thick
book, and
read.
it's thick honking book, and it's got appendices. Dude, it's a science fiction book. It's got appendices, like almost every page, like you just have to think. But it's like like if you want something philosophical that makes you think about like what is the nature of reality, like that book is like absolutely it. But it's a heavy read. If you're into a lighter read, I wouldn't recommend it if you're
Do you
into
read
a
a
lighter
lot
read.
of
Yeah.
different genre books? Like, do you read biographies or do you like fiction primarily,
Yeah.
or
I like it all. I do. I split nowadays in my current stage of life. I usually have two books on the go. I haven't always done this, but now I usually have two books on the go. I'll have like a nonfiction and a fiction book on the go. And like I'll read a chapter of one and then I'll read the chapter of the other. And so I'll just kind of flip back and forth. I don't know why. Part of that is like probably social media has
yeah,
killed my attention span. So I
yeah.
can only handle a chapter. But like I like a good like I like learning things about the world and like just what's going on. So I like nonfiction, but I also love fiction. I also just want to be able to turn my brain off and have a fun little ride. And sort of experience storytelling. So yeah. And I read almost all genres. I'll read almost all genres. I don't think I've read much in the way of romance.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
haven't read a lot of romance novels yet. I got to get
That's
into that.
probably
That's my
yeah, that's kinda
that's my
tough for
next
me
genre.
too, but it's interesting. I used to
Yeah.
as again, my personal journey of reading, you started with a lot of, like, sports biographies and then kind of personal development, business, 'cause that's, what I was interested in.
Yeah.
But as I read more and more, I try to incorporate a fiction book within, like, in between a book or, or 2 that's nonfiction just to, be able to turn my brain off, think about different things. Yeah, yeah.
It's important to do that, right?
Put the
Just turn your
phone
brain off,
down
have a
and
little bit of
just kind of
fun.
lose yourself, in something different besides Netflix and a movie, read something that kind of takes you away. And
Yeah.
it's cool. I recommend that
Yeah.
to a lot of my friends too. They'll ask me for a book recommendation. I'm like, well, what did you read with your last book? Well, let's switch it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, balance it out a
And then
little.
we'll balance it out. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that was pretty heavy. Let's have some fun here. Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and I think with reading, I think you get to like with everything like on screens, it's created for you. Whereas with reading, you kind of it's like you co-create the story in your mind with the author, right? The author gives the scaffolding, but then you do the work in your mind of they look how you want them to look, and you can envision it, imagine it. Like it's a much more generative, creative process for you, the reader, because it's happening in your
Yep.
mind.
No, exactly. I've again, as my reading progression as it advances, I do a lot of that, and I'm getting into different books and different style books, and I think it's a good thing. It opens you up, and it just makes conversation
Yeah.
easier too. Because I'm talking with people that have different interests, and they write different things, and I'm like, oh yeah, I read that, and here's one that's similar. So it's just again, it's another important reason to
Yeah.
read some books. A lot of good
Gives you
reasons
some things
for
to
it,
talk
but
about.
Brad, man, thank you so much for doing this. This has been yeah, well, this has been an awesome
Thank you.
conversation, and I love again, for Books for Guys, I'm just trying to encourage reading and provide as many options as possible because we all have different interests, but I also want to spotlight just people like yourself who are doing different things. You've been in education, you were in drug creation, biomedical stuff before, like just an interesting person who finds it, talks about the importance of reading and writing. Because there's someone else probably out there that has similar interests like you, and they're going to take a lot of benefit to hearing your story. And maybe they're thinking about writing a book, science fiction book, but they don't, or maybe
Do it.
they read a lot, but their friends don't, and so there's, trying to just find some commonalities and share these stories. It's important. And so it's an
Yeah.
honor to have you on and spotlight your books. And man, can't wait to see what else you write. I'm going
Thank
to
you.
be interested. And if I ever see a movie that comes out with it, I'm going to be
Excited.
like, I talked to that guy. Brad wrote that.
I talked to that guy. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciated being here. Hey guys, you only got this life to do all the things. So like
That's
stop
right.
wasting like do all the things. Be all that you want to be. Like this
That's
is
right.
it. This ain't a
That's
dress
right.
rehearsal, right? Just get up there,
We'll, we'll
start
end with that.
experiencing
We
life.
appreciate it, Brad.